summarize State of Union text into bullet points for me. Now you might think this app is the same as the one on the original demo that you are watching now on the YouTube. You're wrong. They're not quite the same, because now we are actually working directly with your SharePoint library. We're not using a folder with files like the original demo did. So let me show you how we're going to build that. To create our web app, we need to start with Azure OpenAI. So come to the Azure OpenAI portal, click on Create, select your subscription. We'll do a new resource group. Let's call it Azure Cognitive Service SharePoint Search, because this app will be used mainly to do search with our SharePoint side. With instance can only be lowercase, and I'm going to, can we make it the same? Demo. And you cannot select a free tier for that, so let's go with standard. Next, we'll make it public for now, and we'll create. And notice I'm always using the East US. Seems that I'm getting most success with this region, because a lot of features we're using are under preview still. So let's create our first Azure OpenAI instance. And here we go. Let's go to our resource. Looks like it's being created. Then the next thing we want to do is go back to our Azure OpenAI, and we want to go to the playground. So this is the one just got created. Let's click on that. Click on go to the Azure OpenAI Studio. That will take us to the playground. And what we're going to do is we're going to deploy our own Azure OpenAI model before we can use it. So see here it says no deployment detected, because I deleted everything already before the video. So let's go create new deployment. Go select your model. We just need a basic one, Turbo 305. No quote is available for this deployment. Oof, what happened there? I might use them up. So let's try 16K. It could cost me a bit more money. And let's just call it ACS SharePoint Search Demo. Token per minute. Just leave it, but you probably need to adjust that if you want to use in the prod. Go create. And that should create our OpenAI model. Now once you've done that, you don't want to click on it. Let's go to the chat playground and see what we can do here. So this is a new feature just got added recently. See this tab here, add your data. This wasn't there. Right, so here you can type whatever you want, just do a normal chat. Still creating, I guess. Do a normal chat with OpenAI, but what we really want to do is want to add our own data. So like the LangChain video we did in the past, we only want the model to provide answers based on the context. In this case, our own data will be the SharePoint online. So it's not a folder on your local drive we're going to upload. It is also not a folder that we want the user to upload. Right? So that's just not what we want here. What we want here is when we add data source, we need to be able to pick up our SharePoint index, which is the most important part of this tutorial. We're going to create that, and that would appear under this Azure Cognitive Search. And so this is how we ingest our SharePoint data into this app to work with the model we just created. Okay, so let's have a look how we're going to do that. So let's create an indexer. Okay, so we're going to follow this document on our right. I have two windows side by side. Index data from SharePoint Document Library. Notice this is a preview feature. This article explains how to configure a search indexer to index documents stored in SharePoint Document Libraries for full text search in Azure Cognitive Search. Okay, so we are creating an index for SharePoint to be used in the ACS. If you keep scrolling down, it tells you a bit of functionalities. Prerequisite, you're going to have some files in Document Library, and there's also supported document formats. Now, just to be clear, this indexer is going to work. It's only going to work with the files inside the document library. These are the common supported files. Now, if you have pages of content on the SharePoint page, which ends in ASPX, this is not supported. If we look up ASPX and let's keep the limitation on the same page, says indexing SharePoint ASPX site content is not supported. Okay, so in our previous other videos, we're going to talk about the generative answers with Power Virtual Agents. And that's where it comes to play, because that supports these ASPX sites. Okay, so go back to document. We're gonna follow this to create our indexer in Azure. Step 1. Enable System Assign Manage Identity optional. Why is optional? If the SharePoint site is in the same tenant as the search service, you will need to enable System Assign Manage Identity for the search service in Azure Portal. Okay, so we are just simple single tenant, everything together. We will need to enable that. But that's not our step 1, because we don't even have a cognitive search service yet. So move to the left. Notice I'm already in the cognitive search. So we're already here, and we're gonna go create our first search service. Now, resource group, we've already created one. Let's use that. And then just keep it lowercase. I'm just gonna call it the same. ACS SP search. Change to our ESUS. Come on, ESUS. You cannot go for the free tier, unfortunately, so just delete it when you're done. Okay, it's not cheap to use it. Now I'm gonna keep it everything as a default, and we're gonna create. Now the resource has been created. Let's go to the search service. First, we're gonna copy the URL, which you're gonna use it later. Just save it somewhere. You also need the admin key. Okay, so just copy one of them. Copy. Next, we can go to the step 1, which in my blog is step 2. Actually, to step 3 to enable the system assign the identity. So go to the identity. We are having the search service and SharePoint the same tenant. That's why we need to turn on the system assigned identity. So save that. And you will get an object ID. Now we're done. Now the step 2 on the doc says, decide which permissions the indexer requires. So usually you will have the dedicated permissions and application permissions. Now for us, or for most of you out there, given you have a well-architected AAD and Office 365, you have all the permissions set up correctly, you always want to choose the dedicated permissions. Why? Because the data access is limited to the size and file to which the user has access. Okay, so when the user actually using the app, they can only have the chat on the file that they have access to. Okay, so this is what you're going to choose, dedicated permissions. The next step is to create an AAD application. The SharePoint indexer will use this AAD application for authentication. So let's go to app registration on Azure. I've just deleted everything to make it a bit easy to read. Give it a name. I'm gonna just keep using the same one until it tells me cannot. SharePoint search. Okay, single tenant. Just keep everything. So give it a name, select single tenant, skip URI, and go register. Okay, so just go that. Next, we're gonna add these permissions. So let's go to the permissions. We're gonna go add. So we've got a user read here already. So we're gonna user read. We also want to add the files read all. So delegated. That's what we want. Files.read.all and sites read.all. Sites read.all. Okay, so we will have files read all, sites read all, user read. Okay. Now it's exactly the same. Read all file, read items, signing, and read user profile. Alright. And then let's grant admin consent. So we're ignoring this bit because we are not using the application, we're using the dedicated. Okay, so it's easier to read my block because I just filtered noise out. We've done the app registration. Oh, here. So we've done the permission. So this step 1 is done. Permission. Next, under authentication. Under the authentication, you can allow public client flows to yes. Okay, so allow the public client flow to yes. Save that. And go add a platform. Select mobile and desktop. We go to the top, go add a platform, mobile and desktop applications. And you're gonna check the OAuth 2 on the top and click on config. And then that's it. That's all we need to do. Just confirm that we've done the permissions. We've granted admin consent. Authentication, we've allowed a public cloud flow, add platform. We're not doing the client secret. That's fine. And that's it. The URI is here. And we're done. Let's also quickly grab the SharePoint site address. Pop it here. That's our SPO. And just make sure you have the documents library, have the files populated. So you had 3 files. A financial statement for Microsoft, a State of the Union, which is just text inside, and a Tesla investor update in a PDF. And we are gonna index these document libraries. Now let's create the data source. A data source specifies which data to index, credentials needed to access data, and the policies to effectively identify changes in the data. Okay, so to do that, unfortunately, there's no GUI to do it. We need to use the preview REST API to do it. Right, so let's bring up your Postman. and follow me for the first step, which is this. To create a data source, you're gonna call the create data source API, which is data sources. Okay, so this is the keyword here, and you're gonna put all that into your Postman to create your sources. So on Postman, we are doing a post with this address. Okay, so we're doing a post, and then for the URL, the service name is the Azure Search Service, which we created that before. In the Azure Search Service, I've copied that. So this is going to be the first part of the URL. And then because we're doing the data sources, it's going to be data sources here, and then API version. Now this is simply just the name of the API. I actually used a different one, so all you need to do is go to this API versions page here. I've picked the latest one, which is 2023, so you just replace with this name. Okay, that's all you need to do. So this is our command post to this address with the new API version I have. Now in the header, you will have your content type and admin key. Remember the admin key we've copied before, you're gonna have it here as a header, and in the body, this is where you're gonna copy that. Right, so copy this to your Postman, and let's see what we need to update. So you've got the name here, you got the type, it has to be SharePoint, you got the credential and a container. Now in the credential, the most important part here is the connection string. Now what is connection string? Let's scroll down here. It tells us what is connection string. Oh, it's right here, connection string. Because we are using the delegate API version permissions, let's just ignore this bit, okay? So we are using delegate API permissions. The connection string is SharePoint site URL plus your Azure AD, the app ID, the app we just created, and the tenant ID. Now you can ignore tenant ID because we have the SharePoint and Azure Cognitive Search in the same tenant, so you don't have to put tenant ID. So look to the left, we have the SharePoint site, which is the one I just showed you. So copy your site URL here without double quote or the bracket, and then you have your application ID here. Okay, and then the last bit is container. The container specifies which document library to index. Okay, so we're just gonna leave it as default. In the bottom of this documentation, it tells you different parameters you can use for how you control the libraries, but we're gonna just leave it at default. Okay, now you're done, and just click on send. Now before I actually create the data source, I just want to quickly show you back in the Azure portal, there is no data source here. Okay, so let's go create data source by click on send. You should get the 201 created response. Okay, now our data source is created. Come back to the Azure, you should be able to see that. After the data sources, now let's create an index. The index specifies the field in a document attributes and other construct the shape of the search experience. Now to do that, we're also going to use our Postman, very similar. This URL endpoint is same except this bit. So instead of data sources, now it's indexes. Okay, so you're going to change that. The rest is the same with the URL and your API versions. And again, in the header, you're going to have application JSON and you have admin key here. And then you're just going to copy this bit to your request body, which we're not going to make any changes here. Just default, and you go send. Now what's going to happen after this is you will get 201 created again. Back to our Azure portal. Under the indexes, right here, Here you go. This is the index we just created. After data sources and index, now we're going to create an indexer. An indexer connects a data source, which we already created that, with a target search index, which we also create, and provides a schedule to automate the data refresh. Once the index and data source have been created, you're ready to create an indexer. Okay, so we're gonna do this bit, but this bit is a little bit tricky. The reason is, first we're gonna do this create index request, and then when we create this index for the first time, this request will remain waiting. Okay, so you need to move on to do another get call to get the link and enter your device code to authenticate. And when you authenticate, you'll get that, and you need to sign in to a user who has the SharePoint access. Okay, so the SharePoint indexer will access the SharePoint content as the signing user. Okay, so let's do that. So first, make sure you got the correct URL. Everything the same except now we're doing indexers. And also update your headers. And the body, we're just gonna copy and paste that. Okay, we're not gonna change it. Okay, you can actually see it's doing the PDF and docs. So I forgot about that. Actually, this is only gonna be working with PDF and docs. Just let's leave it as it is, and excluding the images, because right now this product does not support images. Okay, so let's go send, and it will just stay on this sending request waiting. Next, we're gonna do this get command. So I had it here. We update the headers. You're gonna do the get. Okay, there's nothing in the body. You just need to get a status, and then we're gonna go send, and then we'll expect to get a response like that in the error message. Okay, so in the error message, to sign in, use the web browser to open that. So let's copy that, and we'll put machine coding. So I'm gonna go to the account that have the SharePoint access. I'm gonna paste it here. Let's put the coding to authenticate. Select our account which have the SharePoint access, and I go continue. Now you have signed in. So now the create index initial request will complete. But the tricky part is everything has to be done within 10 minutes. So when you try to follow along, make sure you get it done within 10 minutes from the moment you start this create index command, which is this one. So as you can see, previously it was saying sending request, but now it has given us the response. And if we come back to here, just do a get again. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. There's no more error messages. And if we go back to our Azure, come to indexer, let's refresh it. Here you go. So this is our SharePoint indexer. Now if you look closely, you can see the indexer has already processed 2 documents. Now why is 2 documents, not 3? I've uploaded 3 documents. That's because in our create indexer body, in here we are only included the PDF and docs. So we have 1 PDF and 1 docs, and this Excel has been ignored. Okay, so this matches our expectations. Perfect. Because I know the Excel are supported, so we just need to include it here. So let's see how robust this application is, how hard it is to modify it. So let's just do Excel SX, comma, give a space, and we got a PDF, and then we get docs. Alright, let's go send it again, see whether it will give us error. So bring up our indexer, index 2 files, let's go send, we might get an error, bad request. Right, so we can't do that. So let's delete this. I believe this we can do. We don't want to delete the indexer, we just want to delete this indexer. We don't want to delete index data source, so just delete this. That's been done. And we just need to run this again. So this time it will include the Excel file. So let's go send it again. And it will be hanging here. Now go to our get. Okay, we'll do the same thing. Let's clear this and do this again. Try that again. Looks like it's already authenticated, which means we don't have to do the browser login. Just come back here. That should finished. Exactly. So now the indexer has been created, which will include all these 3 files. Refresh that. As you can see, it has already processed 3 documents. So there will be all 3 documents: the Excel, the Word document, and PDF. And now we can have a look at another command called the run. Okay, so it's exactly same as the get, but just change the status to the run. What that does is, if you now add another document here, you do not need to recreate an indexer, because that's all good. All you need to do is to rerun it. So if you come up here, you can rerun update data source by running this command. Run the indexer with a run. And this should update your file. Now I believe if you don't do this on the schedule, the data source should update, so you don't have to run this manually. If there's no update to update the data source object, the indexer can run on a schedule without any user intervention. But now just let's try if we add another file to our SharePoint site, and we'll run this get command. Sorry, this run command, whether it will update our data from the indexer here. So back our SharePoint, I have uploaded another PDF file called APPL for Apple. Now let's go back to our indexer. Still 3 files. I don't know what's the schedule actually. Need to look that up, but let's manually run the indexer again by using the run command. So this is the post command with a run. So we are doing this post command to run the indexer again. Go send. Let's see what happens. Accepted. Okay. So not much details here, but let's go back to Azure. Still says 3. It says document succeeded 1. So I'll assume that worked. Execution history, you can see the success. We had 3 documents and now we had 1. Excellent. We have completed the hardest part, which is to create the SharePoint indexer. Now we are ready to create our web app. Go back to your Azure OpenAI Studio under the chat playground. Click on Add Your Data. Click on Add Data Source. Azure Cognitive Search. So we're going to pick your search service and the index we just created. SharePoint index. Go next. in this index data mapping, I actually don't know what's the best way, what's the correct way. I'm just select everything as content. Go next, next, and save and close. Now we cannot chat and asking questions straight away. For example, can you highlight the state of union into bullet points? Because you just create a model or you just added your data source, you need to wait a couple of minutes. But since we're gonna wait, right, let's just create a model. Let's just deploy our app. In fact, because that's gonna take more time, so we can test in our pretty web app interface. So we'll call this ACSSP. Let's call it Chat with SharePoint Online. Select your resource group, East US, and the pricing plan, the cheapest one I can get. And I go deploy. Why is doing that? SharePoint ChatGPT with SPO. Okay, so it says your web app will be configured, and please wait 10 minutes and reload the app. Then log in and begin chatting. That's my test one. We'll be back in 10. Now let's try the app. So we have our SharePoint side by side. So we're gonna ask questions, see whether it actually is aware of these uploaded data. So start with the first one. Let's see, how did Apple perform in the last quarter? Did not find any answers. Okay, what about this Excel document, which is Microsoft's financial metrics? They do the same thing. How did Microsoft perform financially last quarter? We couldn't see any of the Excel file as well. Let's try this state union. It's just a pure text pretty much. Can you tell the state of union into bullet points and see whether this one it gets it? Oh, looks like the Word document is working fine. Now this last Tesla, this probably won't work. Okay, highlight Tesla's investor update. Okay, so the Word document worked. It actually also give you the citation, which is good. But that I expect that to work because it's very simple, plain text file in the Word document. This one also didn't work. As you can see, our index has processed 4 documents successfully, but we were only able to ask questions regarding this Word document, not the others. So why I don't sound particularly surprising? Because Microsoft has actually told me creating this SharePoint index in the Azure Cognitive Search and combining it with our ChatGPT app is not officially supported. So I used it anyway. I just want to see how far we can go, but looks like it only worked well with a Word document. Right, so if we come back to our search here. Let's go to Search Explorer and do a little bit experiment. For example, we want to ask for a question regarding the Apple. So if you just type Apple and do a search, see whether it will return any results. Okay, so it looks like it gives you a similarity score of 0.6 between 0 to 1. So it's quite confident and actually pick up the correct, looks like the correct file. Thank you. Thank you. But if you want to ask a question, let's say how much money did Apple make last quarter? Now that is a semantic search question. Sorry, I was wrong about the score, ignore that. But first it went to State of Union, then went to the thank you, that's correct. And then this one is financial summary of not sure which one is this. There could be Apple as well. But it was not able to return proper answers to you. Now there are a few things we can do, which I won't be able to cover in this video, otherwise it's going to be super long. Semantic search. There's a free plan which we can try that. So I will be able to ask questions in a more semantic way in the chat. But also that might not necessarily fix the problem that it doesn't know the context at all. That has to be fixed from the data ingestion, the index. So not long ago, this week, the vector search actually is being added right now under public preview with the cognitive search. Now, in the future video, I'm going to try this because that will give us a close, very close result, like we did with the LangChain video, that we used retrieval augmentation with LangChain and also with the Chroma vector database. So I'm hoping by using this solution, it will actually produce a very similar result, because now you are talking about text embeddings, vectors, and the chunking. All these concepts you should be familiar with already if you watched my other LangChain video. So hopefully, this is still early, so hopefully this product will become better and more usable, because as you can see, once you got the index created, it's very easy to deploy the app and very easy to use it. And if you configure authentications, then only the users will be able to answer or ask questions on data they have access with. So thank you for watching the video. In this tutorial, we have created a SharePoint index in Azure Cognitive Search, and then we combine it with our ChatGPT Playground, and we create a web app to provide a very, very good user-friendly interface that you will ask questions about. At the same time, we discover some limitation with the current solution, and I look forward to improve this as the product gets more mature and supports more formats and more data sources. So that's it. I'll see you next time.